big issue for California, not just during these storms, but during wildfires and other natural disasters as well. The fragile power grid is the subject of a new documentary narrated by actor Dennis Quaid.
The electricity grid goes down. You're back in the 1880s, pre-electricity.
If 1,000 transformers are knocked out, we'll end up with massive social disruption.
That documentary is called Grid Up, Power Down. It's focused on the precarious nature of the U.S. power grid as one of the biggest potential national security issues hardly ever talked about. Joining us now is the director and producer of that film, David Tice. Thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to be with you and your listeners and viewers.
So let's talk about, first off, the weather and how big an impact that is for our power system. We're seeing that in the last few weeks here in California.
Well, the film we just did talked about 4 major threats, and we really don't get into the weather, but I can make some general points. Essentially, our grid is very vulnerable and it's somewhat fragile and unstable. And frankly, our electrical companies are really poorly regulated in terms of FERC, NERC, or a couple alphabet soup type regulators. And there's essentially been regulatory capture. And therefore, the utility companies are not being forced to do all they really should be doing.
Meaning, essentially, you got a bunch of aging infrastructure that should have been updated a long time ago, but they're too cheap to do that because they want to make more money, is essentially the point of your film. Let's talk for another one of the dangers you do get into in a big way is how foreign actors can attack our infrastructure. You use this phrase EMP, a nuclear EMP. What is that, and how could that impact all of us?
So an EMP is an electromagnetic pulse attack. And that's essentially a nuclear blast in the atmosphere can be 20 kilometers to 200 kilometers in the atmosphere. And it essentially creates gamma waves that come down, and these are very destructive. You might not even hear this electromagnetic pulse blast in the atmosphere, but the electronics are fried essentially inside our transformers, inside our cell phones, inside our refrigerators, and that's where the destruction comes. And so there has been an EMP commission that operated at the behest of Congress for some 17 years with some of the best scientists in the world. And they found that if we have a massive EMP attack knocking out these major transformers, a number of which are made in China, and that have to be replaced and have a great deal of lead time, as many as 90% of Americans could die.
Wow, 90%. So in 30 seconds, the most important solution, you would say, got to contact your representatives and tell them what? What's the bottom line message?
So in our film at griddownpowerup.com, we have a mechanism by which you can write letters to all your regulators, your legislators, your board of directors of utilities. Tell them we have to get on this. We have to pay attention. We need an outrage from the American public, and we can fix this because there is technology out there that can fix it.
All right, the full film streams on Tuesday, but you now see part of it streaming at griddownpowerup.com. David Tice, the director, congratulations, an important piece of work.
Thank you very much for having me.